Coupa's CEO sent our profession a challenge at the beginning of the COVID-19 crisis. He said, "Now more than ever is the time for procurement to come forward, take their seat as a strategic business advisor and on-the-ground leader to help navigate through this environment for everyone's benefit. Now's the time to lead. Let's do it together." Procurious' recent How Now Supply Chain Confidence Index, which was completed by more than 600 professionals globally, confirmed that 97% of supply chains were impacted by COVID-19. Supplier health, cost containment and risk management are top of mind in the boardroom. Procurement has the eyes and ears of the C-suite. Now is our opportunity to step up and take the lead. But have we fully taken up the challenge? That's what we wanted to find out in our second survey for the year. In partnership with Coupa, early in 2020, we took a deeper dive into procurement's challenges and success in taking the lead during COVID-19 by exploring, firstly, procurement's current alignment with the C-suite, the changing role of procurement, whether procurement is structured in the right way to support the company into the future, and then whether procurement has the right processes and technologies in place to support their expanding responsibilities. The top-line results of this survey are just in, so we will be revealing some of the findings for the first time today. I'm delighted to bring together 3 leading global CPOs to share their early insights on the top-line survey findings, hear their experiences during COVID, and to share their lessons learned when stepping up to lead. Let me introduce Stephen Day. Stephen has recently been appointed the Chief Procurement Officer of Kantar, based in the United Kingdom. Kantar is home to some of the world's leading research data and insights brands, offering the most complete view of consumers, the way they live, shop, vote, watch and tweet in over 100 countries worldwide. Stephen has previously held senior procurement and supply chain roles at Pearson, Vodafone and T-Mobile. He is an accomplished international executive specializing in multi-country transformation and change. He has a track record of transforming existing business models to create new growth opportunities and service improvements through the power of the supply chain. Let me introduce Coretta Bessie. Coretta is an experienced senior executive across mining, manufacturing, energy and financial services industries. She is recognized as a leader in designing and executing procurement transformational change and major efficiency programs. She is an empowering leader who has built teams through startups and rapid growth, developed talent through turnarounds to sustainable maturity, and retained or repurposed critical skills through downturn and closures. She is a non-executive director with a wide range of responsibilities, including chair of audit, risk and investment committees, participating as a member of people and governance committees, advisory boards, and as an independent consultant. She has also invested in, co-founded, and developed a number of startup and enterprises and networks. Coretta is passionate about responsible practices, balancing social, environmental, governance, and economic factors in commercial business decisions to develop sustainable solutions. She's fascinated about applying her experience and knowledge through actively uplifting next generation of leaders and supporting for-purpose enterprises to have a broader impact. Michael Van Keulen is the CPO of Coupa Software. Prior to this role, he was the CPO of Lululemon. Michael is a seasoned procurement executive with a comprehensive track record of driving value through business transformation at global companies. Throughout his career, he's orchestrated multiple procurement transformations, implemented procurement best practices, and expanded spend under management to drive significant stakeholder value. As I mentioned, Michael is the Chief Procurement Officer at Coupa Software, the global leader in cloud-based business spend management software. He is responsible for driving best-in-class procurement practices across the company to support business development and be a source of peers looking to digitally transform procurement. As a procurement practitioner, Michael is especially passionate about driving value, digital transformation, sustainability, CSR, and diversity inclusion. The beauty of having 3 such accomplished executives is that today's conversation can cover the globe and a whole range of industries. There should be rich learnings for all of our listeners today, wherever you're from and wherever you're working. Okay, so let's get started with today's conversation. Stephen, let's start with you. I know you've just got your feet under the desk at Kantar, but have you got any insights from your global research data that would be of interest and importance to our procurement and supply chain listeners? And also, what's your C-suite looking for right now?
Thanks for the question, Tanya. I think in terms of insights, one of the most interesting ones that we've recently commissioned, as you can imagine, we get lots of FMCG brands asking us for what customers are thinking about the value propositions and things like that. And unsurprisingly, through COVID, the category of cleansing and detergent products that historically were relegated to a commodity category have now suddenly become something that is at the top of people's minds and has a lot of value add associated with it. So, and of course, it means that the brands are now changing their investment strategy towards categories that historically they may have thought were to some degree just commoditized. So that's a little bit of what we're seeing in terms of FMCG. In terms of the ask of me joining the business, well, I joined in April, so very unusual experience because I haven't actually physically met anybody that I'm working for or working with. So going through that learning experience. But of course, I'm being asked to kind of help stabilize the business, make sure that we're managing our cash and our expense in the short term. But very quickly, as we kind of see the green shoots of COVID recovery, pivoting back to really the transformation that I'm here to deliver, which is really in three parts. Systems and data capability. We've got to significantly transform the way we run and operate our internal business. Secondly, really drive the notion of business partnering and category management. And then thirdly, deliver a kind of comprehensive long-term savings plan that will support the transition of our business from a research-orientated business to a data analytics business. So they're really the three things that I'm being asked to do. And I would frame it as a bit like Gartner described, moving very quickly from cost management, cost containment to kind of value add and economic performance.
What a great summary. Cash, transformation, business partnering, savings, and I love this optimism of us moving forward and looking at the value we can deliver into the future once we get our costs contained. So thank you, Stephen. Now, what about you, Coretta? I think you've just clocked up your first year with one of the largest banks in Asia Pacific. How's it all going?
Yes, it's 12 months and it's been an absolute whirlwind, Tanya. The financial services sector is obviously a very highly regulated industry. It is facing a challenging economic environment, and now and more recently it's had a much heightened level of community and customer expectations. Westpac in particular has had really challenging times over the last 12 months. And that's obviously been compounded even more recently with trying to help all of our customers and communities through COVID-19 while we were all working remotely as well. Our procurement team has really stepped up to face into those challenges. They have pivoted from tactical siloed activities to strategic category management. They've moved from a really basic cost focus to risk management, and now they're looking at enabling the whole organisation through a digital and simplification transformation, and it's very much that we're focused on customer outcomes and risk excellence. So I'm really proud of how the whole team have navigated these times, and I've thoroughly enjoyed my time here so far.
And long may it continue. So yes, the voice of the customer, and of course in banking these days it's all about compliance, isn't it, the regulator. So that always adds a fantastic dimension. So Michael, let's bring you into this conversation. You've got the unique position on one of the world's leading executive leadership team at Coupa, a software company that oversees over $1.6 trillion worth of spend for some of the world's largest companies. How do you think companies have been impacted by COVID, and what are your customers' CEOs looking for right now?
Yeah, no, it's great, and thank you for having me on this. It's an exciting time. Initially, what we were seeing is that companies were turning to their own four walls. I think that was the first reaction. The focus was on cost containment, canceling purchase orders, reduction in demand, extending payment terms, and very much focusing on what you can control in the very short term. All very natural in times of high uncertainty and a high level of disruption. I think what we then saw is that businesses started to pivot. People started to look at more like business continuity, identifying critical suppliers, focus on third-party risk and the management and mitigation of that, reputational risk, operational risk, those types of things. Countries going into full shutdown, which meant that demand patterns were changing dramatically in a very short period of time, and force majeure clauses, is something that I've heard often talked about, were being reevaluated. What did it really mean to have force majeure in your contracts? And what companies really started to realize is that collaboration and partnership are really the key. You're going to need suppliers, right? I mean, you're going to need suppliers in order to continue your own business and the continuity of that. And as a result, what we were seeing is that companies were exploring and implementing things that up until recently were never really talked about. Like, for example, accelerating payment terms. Accelerating payment over what you contractually had agreed, or reductions in service levels, and being okay with that, and being really innovative around prepayments or shifting demand to more preferred resources. As a result, relationships became more strategic, and I think that what we've been seeing and hearing, across the globe, across industries, is that became really, really critical. So new partnerships were formed. Companies who had now digitized their business spend processes realized that they had to accelerate this. So we're hearing a lot around that, and all with the intent to become more agile and more competitive, to capitalize on opportunities regardless of what lies ahead. If you then pivot to the second part of your question around customer CEOs, and I would argue CEOs at large, I mean, what are they expecting of procurement in today's market? I believe it's a couple different things. When it comes to what leaders in the industry are doing to what we refer to today as business spend management, which is really the entire source to pay process managed by one single platform. I think the first thing is around spend visibility and analytics. Where do you spend? With who do you spend? What governance do you have in place? And how do you ensure there's contract compliance? And we match demand with the new business and economic realities. The second thing is visibility into your supply chain. What do you know about your suppliers? Third-party risk. What does that mean to your business? Again, your continuity. Do I need to move to what some might now call just in case instead of a just-in-time strategy? And what alternative strategies do I need to plan for? The third thing is, well, how do we ensure that we have a competitive spend base? Procurement is always tasked with that, and I think that most CEOs are now really looking at procurement to ensure that you have that competitive spend base, you got the right strategic relationships. How do I compare to my competition, and how do I leverage the power of the Coupa community and benchmark myself against this $1.6 trillion plus in spend that we manage for 1,700 customers plus. Finally, just in closing on this one is, how prepared are you if this pandemic lasts longer? What if the economic downturn turns into a prolonged depression or recession? How can I utilize the BSM platform and drive more value with additional functionalities? And so we've seen a lot of interest in things like risk assess, risk aware, Coupa Pay to do virtual payments, and also contingent workforce. We have a platform that can help with the uptick in demand that will happen once the economy picks up.
Thank you, Michael. You covered a lot of ground there. Consumer demand changing when COVID first hit, the force majeure issues, obviously cash, people needing to accelerate payment terms, relationships becoming more strategic, the need to be agile, and then, of course, the CEO spotlight on spend visibility, risk assessment, being competitive, and, looking at the long term too, because we really don't yet fully know what the economic fallout of COVID is going to be and how long it is going to last. So that was a really fabulous overview there. So thank you all for joining us and for that overview. I now want to, very exciting for us, to share some of our top-line findings from the Procurement's Time to Lead survey. These are hot off the press, So it'll be great to get our three experts' initial feedback on our top-line findings. And speakers today, don't worry, we're not going to hold you to these comments, but I just thought it was a great chance, given that you're all here with us today, to get your thoughts. So I'm going to share them with you now, and we can explore them in more detail as we have our conversation today. So here's the top 4 findings. Number 1, that 2/3 of procurement teams have seen trust increase with the C-suite over the past 3 months. Fabulous. Secondly, 93% of procurement leaders say operational risk is the top concern of executive teams, followed by supplier risk and business environment risk. So no big surprises there. It's great to see that that's still top of the ladder. What is a big shock outcome from the survey, and it'll be great to talk about this later, is that less than 25% of our respondents have full visibility into their addressable spend. And, you know, as we all know, visibility has always been a challenge, but makes it compounded in a time like this where we're trying to manage risk. And the 4th top-line finding was that as procurement's role continues to grow, most organisations, 93%, are investing big to help them lead, which is a great story. So the top areas of investment are data and analytics, existing talent development and technology. So there you go. There's some of the top-line findings, and thank you for everyone for responding. I think we had over 500 responses to the Procurement's Time to Lead survey. So we'll circle back through to these points throughout our conversation. But let's really start with alignment as we move into today's topic, because at procurement conferences around the world and on webinars and podcasts like these, we discuss ad nauseum the importance of procurement aligning itself with the strategic corporate business objectives. And I thought, given the career success that all 3 of you have achieved to date, I'm assuming that you have nailed the ability to demonstrate procurement's alignment with the corporate strategy and have really learned how to secure your seat at the executive table. So I was just going to ask each of you, could you share any helpful hints for our listeners on how to find, define and articulate that magic alignment between procurement and the business strategy? And then can you share a story from your career development, that time when you realised you'd really worked out how to secure your seat and your voice within the C-suite? So, Coretta, why don't I pass to you first? I've given a very broad brush brief there, but, you know, everyone on the call today, you know, we're here to learn. And this is the thing we probably most have to learn. So why don't you share your story?
Yeah, sure. So a helpful hint to find, define and articulate for alignment. So I guess my helpful hint would be to take time to understand. And when I say understand, it means really understand the business, the stakeholders, their drivers, their pain points, understand the business strategy and vision and the metrics that it's holding itself accountable to and the priorities that it's focusing on. Certainly understand the jargon and the language and what their stories and their narrative are and what they care about. I've found it's only then you can truly create an alignment of the procurement function to the business and the stakeholders. And that's because I really believe that procurement can be a bit of an all-rounder, really. I mean, we can satisfy and enable any stakeholder and any business at any point in the cycle. We have so many levers to pull. We just need to stop being a one-trick cost-saving pony, as I call it. So a story, I guess, in terms of through my career, how I've demonstrated procurement can align with the organisation, especially how it changes priorities. And it's different in every business I've worked in. A story I can share is when I was the CPO at Australia's largest energy distributor. I made up a snappy acronym called SPARK, and SPARK was S-P-A-R-K, so it sounded kind of electric, right? But it was actually based on what I understood was the organisation's objectives and how we played back to explain what procurement did. So just walking through that really briefly, and this is literally the narrative my team would use with the business. So what procurement does, it's all about sustainability. First and foremost, focusing on social, environmental and governance. And that's through partnering. We have to be able to partner with our internal partners and our external partners to be able to deliver that. And that will enable us, A, the affordability, so being able to have affordability of our network, which is all about cost reductions, but then also making sure that reliability of our services to be able to reduce risks. And the only way we do all of those is through K, knowledge, where we have common data and information through systems. So SPARK, Spark, sustainability, partnering, affordability, reliability, and knowledge. And all of those stories that we used and how we spoke about that really resonated with our executives. It resonated with our stakeholders. It was something that all of my team could relate to, no matter what their role. It allowed them a narrative and a storytelling that they were able to really hone in something that they had achieved or what they were working on to one or more of those, and really allowed us to align what procurement could do to assist the business's priorities.
Fantastic example, and just something so simple that they can work through in their head as they're meeting with stakeholders and that others remember. What about you, Stephen? Have you got a handy hint for everyone who's listening today?
Well, I mean, I count myself as very lucky in my career, and someone once told me that luck is when opportunity and preparation come together. So I think in that regard, I think there are three things that I think about in terms of what's helped me in my career. The first one is pick the people you want to work with. And I know a lot of people kind of use that as a strapline, but they never do it. But I have to tell you, I've worked with some incredible business leaders. One was a guy called Detlef Schultz at Vodafone, and I learned exactly how to nail the C-suite from the way he operated. So first and foremost, learn from the people you work with. The second thing is be naturally inquisitive. I think, if you want to have that elevator pitch with a CEO when you're going up the elevator, you don't start by giving him the 10 things that operations procurement does. You do by kind of having an engaging conversation about, how the business is performing, what's going on in his world. And then the third thing I'd say is be courageous. Take gambles, make difficult decisions, stand by them and execute on them. And I think if you do those three things, certainly my experience has been that you can make incredible progress and really build a strong reputation in the business. In terms of a very specific example, I mean, there's been a couple. I mean, one, when I was at Pearson, we completely reinvented the manufacturing system for how we would deliver physical print to our bookshelves, to our booksellers, I beg your pardon. And that was a complete reinvention of the traditional model. We did that really by engaging with the leadership team in the business, importantly engaging with the supply chain that supported the delivery of our products, and as Coretta has said, really creating a kind of internal narrative that you can constantly go back to and remind everybody about what is the transformation, the change that you're trying to affect. And as I say, own it, take the risks, engage with the business and learn. I mean, I wouldn't say they are magic ingredients, but they're certainly the ingredients that have supported me in my progression over the course of the many years.
It's fantastic. I particularly love courage. I mean, I think that is a big thing that we all need to have. And as one of my favourite CFOs has always said, the idea will always be rewarded, and that the C-level doesn't have all the answers, and they're relying on the people, beneath them to come to them with the answers. And a lot of people are probably afraid to approach or broach the C-suite. So, yeah. Michael, what about you? A story from your career about how you nailed communication with the C-suite?
Yeah, no, I mean, first of all, I love these examples. Yeah, I think we all have them, and I think we all have some scars along the way. But first of all, I genuinely believe there's no silver bullet. It all depends on, the circumstances are different. Every company is different. Maturity of your stakeholders are different. The tools you may or may not have are different. Investment priorities, strategic objectives, and all that stuff, they all play a role. And therefore, my belief, honestly, is that it's very important that you have a certain level of, what people call EIQ or EQ to maneuver in any situation, in any circumstance that you get yourself into. The key for me has always been to demonstrate to executives and business stakeholders are equally, and if not even more important. The procurement is not there to prove that, we are wrong, we are right, and you're wrong, or that we're there to do their job. It's really important that you take away that fear or that maybe perceived, objective that we may have. That's not what we're there to do. We are there to provide better insight into spend. We are a competitive edge by uncovering resource inefficiencies and drive innovation. We are there to highlight risk, and ultimately what we want to do, and I think Stephen actually mentioned it as well, is accelerate strategic objectives. And the way to do that is by making better informed decisions. The D of decision always lies with the business, and it's very, very important that procurement emphasizes that. I have great examples. I can talk about this for hours, but the one that always resonates with me is the shopping bag example when I was at Lululemon, the employer I was before I joined Coupa. And it's a category that is very, very strategic. And for those of you listening and know Lululemon, they know exactly what I'm talking about. It's very visible. You see it at airports. You see it everywhere. It's very strategically important for a company that does not do traditional marketing like Lululemon. 6 or 8 weeks into the role at Lululemon, I started to dig into the category together with the team, and we very quickly, got some rumblings, at the executive levels. It went up to that level that procurement didn't understand how strategically important this shopping bag is to the business. And there was some fear that we would disrupt the partnership with the supplier, and that would negatively impact the store experience, which, for those in retail, is an absolute no-no. So what we actually did is we highlighted that Lululemon was single-sourced for its #1 marketing collateral with one factory in Cambodia, and the only thing that this factory did was produce Lululemon shopping bags with a lead time of 9 months, rather than 3 or 4 is what kind of the industry benchmark is, and Lululemon overpaid by 30 or 40%. So when we raised all those points to the executives, one, they realized that they didn't really understand the commodity that they were talking about and was so extremely important to the business. And the second thing is that they realized that procurement is not just looking at cost. We are looking at many different angles. We do understand what we're talking about. And when they realized that, it changed the perspective of everybody in the room, all the executive suite, and it made the entire transformation significantly easier.
I love it. See, it's always the strategic supplier. It's not always your biggest spend that undoes you, isn't it? I mean, we think about this recent story with Fiat having to close its factory in Italy for the one small part, but Lululemon could have been shut down just by that one shopping bag experience. And believe me, I think a lot of people will be doing more exercise during COVID, so they're probably thankful that you've diversified there, Michael. So look, trust is something we talk a lot about in procurement, building trust with our suppliers, our community, and our internal stakeholders. And as I explained earlier, hot off the press from our Procurement's Time to Lead survey, our first finding was that 2/3 of procurement teams have seen trust increase with the C-suite over the past 3 months. So for our 3 speakers today, I mean, throughout your career, what actions and approaches have you taken to help build trust between yourself and the C-suite? Michael, let's start with you.
Yeah, great. Trust is something you earn, right? You're not going to get it. At least this is my opinion. And as much as I agree that trust is important, to me, the biggest thing has always been be bold. I think, Stephen, you just mentioned it as well. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Ask for forgiveness instead of permission. Not all the time, but sometimes that's okay. And be empowered. And to me, this means take calculated risk, challenge status quo based on facts. Fact-based decision-making is a very crucial component of what procurement brings to the table. Do your homework, obviously. You want to know and understand what you're talking about. But don't be afraid to stand up and demonstrate how and where procurement drives value. The other thing that I would say is, develop EQ. I said it before. Procurement is not a competition. It's not about winning. It's not about beating up a supplier until they cave. It's got nothing to do with any of that. It's about understanding the business and your strategic priorities. And once you understand that, that's where you are going to build that trust. The supplier ecosystem, provide options to your stakeholders that help accelerate whatever strategic objectives they have. Again, the business always has the D, but procurement owns the competitive process. So we need to drive that.
What about you, Coretta? How have you built trust over time?
Yeah, so to me, on a more generic basis, trust is all around consistency and integrity. And when I think about consistency, it's absolutely saying what you will do and then doing what you will say, and that's all the time. My view is if you're consistent, then you're predictable. And if you're predictable, then people will know what to expect. But having consistency and predictability with the wrong intentions obviously does not allow trust. And you need integrity. And when I think about integrity, it is absolutely doing the right things for the right reasons. So when I say the right things, it's doing things that are ethical, right for your customers, best for the community, having the organisational objectives over your own personal career ambitions. I often tell people the person with the biggest ego in the room is often not trusted, but it absolutely does not mean that you need to be a pushover or an action taker from the business. Stephen just talked about having courage, and Michael just mentioned about being bold. I talk about really respectfully challenging the organisation, and it's that respectful challenge and that insights provider we can be that allows us being a strategic, trusted partner where we can collaborate with stakeholders and executives to achieve those business objectives. I mean, an approach I have taken over the years, and I've done this many times, I share what I have had written in my whiteboard in my office for about the last 20 odd years. And on my whiteboard I had, together we can achieve the impossible if we do not care who takes the credit. And I've often highlighted that to some of the most senior executives in the company that I've worked for, that procurement can really make them and their businesses exceptionally successful. We can work with them, not against them, but work with them to achieve the impossible. And we don't actually care who gets the credit. So that quote alone has really built trust, and it's established a foundation of how we work collaboratively together to really achieve good outcomes over time.
That's a brilliant comment, Coretta. I mean, I remember in the early days when procurement got started, it was all about who took credit for the savings, and that was obviously one of the biggest hurdles. The operations didn't want to let you in because the engineers wanted, the credit for taking out the production savings. So it's key to, building that trust and breaking down those barriers, with the stakeholders. So great example. Stephen, what about you? Building trust.
Well, I mean, as everybody's been talking, I've been taking copious notes, and I have to say that I think some of the examples the guys have been fabulous. I mean, I think I'm going to sound a little bit repetitive because I agree with so much of what Michael and Coretta have said. For me, integrity is about having a point of view and owning it, and not being wavered from that point of view, even though the business may disagree with the stance that you're taking. So kind of a point on courage, I think, there, and holding the line. Of course, that doesn't mean that you recklessly hold on to a decision regardless of the evidence that may make you want to check that. But again, I think integrity is about also acknowledging where mistakes or decisions need to be changed, because the circumstances or the intelligence you've got leads you to make a different decision. So I think that's really, really important for me. The second thing is, and I like so much of what Michael said, as I navigate through my journey at Kantar, I've been very, very clear with the business that the decision, is the business owners. I'm not here to usurp their budget. I'm not there to take away their decision rights. What I am there is to help them inform and guide them through the sourcing process. And I think it's those two perspectives, one of integrity and then really thinking through as a trusted business partner, are the ways in which you can build real trust. And then the final thing is just build a reputation for execution and delivery. Easier said than done, but at the end of the day, execution, and particularly in these troubling times, is going to be the thing that's really going to build your reputation internally within the business. And one final point, and Coretta is absolutely right, and look, I mean, this is all about sharing learnings. I definitely think in the early part of my career, I was mercilessly taking the credit of many other people. And what I've come to realize is it's a really poor leadership trait. That is, you've got to celebrate other people's success and make them feel like they've owned it, they've delivered it, reward them where you can, evangelize it, because what you're really there to do is build capability and success for the business. And, you know, if your career has the right trajectory off the back of that, great, but you're not in a role to kind of for self-aggrandizement, so to speak.
Oh, I love it. The humility you've learned over the years, and I love the admission that you did used to take credit, Stephen. You are fully evolved CPO, aren't you?
Yeah, I've had a lot of coaching.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Look, thank you. That was a great discussion about building trust. Really key, I think, for gaining the trust of the C-level and getting that engagement. So thank you for those really practical and inspiring stories. So one of the questions we asked in the Procurement's Time to Lead survey was whether your business partners or stakeholders have asked for more advanced sourcing and category management support during the past 3 months, and what tools or strategies have been used. So can you share your stories? Have you seen an increase or a change in requirements from your business stakeholders? Michael, why don't we start with you at Coupa? Have things changed during COVID?
Yeah, I think Stephen and I have one thing in common, which is, we both started when COVID hit. So I've been with the company for a little over 3 months now. And my first day was literally getting in a car, driving to Best Buy to buy my laptop. So it's been kind of interesting. But, that aside, at Coupa, of course, to be the head of procurement in a procurement company is like a dream for any practitioner, I'd imagine. But, we are really trying to elevate our internal procurement practices. Frankly, I mean, we've gone through hyper growth. We've made a couple of strategic acquisitions. Most recently, we acquired Bellin for treasury management. And as a result of that, we do need to reestablish procurement best practices. We need to ensure we are fully utilizing, the Coupa platform, like drink your own champagne or eat your own dog food, whatever acronym you want to use there, and be the cutting edge procurement function that we want to be to continue to support our strategic objectives. So that's kind of like at the highest level. To break that down a tiny bit, just for the audience, the first thing we did is contract visibility. We did have some opportunities there to have better contract visibility internally. So we started with that. What suppliers do I have? How strategic are they, etc. Then we were getting into more strategic conversations with internal stakeholders, and say like, we want to get ahead of the spend. So when you talk about category management, that's kind of what that starts to do, is right, get ahead of the spend and not just rubber stamp a contract. I mean, that's not really procurement. And then, that means that the business, contemplates anything that they should engage with procurement to brainstorm, articulate what they are trying to achieve, and then how can procurement, plug into that and do our homework, perform our own due diligence. And so we're in the midst of implementing a 7-step procurement process that drives better business outcomes. We're deploying Coupa Risk Aware to have the technology proactively alert us when a supplier requires special attention. I think those are kind of like the initial things that we're doing right now.
Thank you. What about you, Stephen? What's been in demand recently?
Well, I mean, obviously, as a newbie to Kantar, and our heritage was we were part of WPP, which was a very successful marketing services business. We're now owned by Bain Capital. So I've come in to basically set up the entire procurement capability, soup to nuts, from organization, systems and process, right through to category management and figuring out how we're going to take value out of the business over the course of the next couple of years. So, sorry, not take value out of the business, put value into the business. I beg your pardon.
Remember, you're fully evolved. You're adding value.
Should get that right from the get-go. I think there are a couple of themes, though, and I would just implore the procurement community. Number one, if you're tinkering around with your own in-house procurement systems, technology, or things like that, you need to really think very, very differently. I am fundamentally of the view that an ERP system does not bring competitive success to your business. And I think too many procurement people still tinker in that because that what they think is that's where it is. For me, success is going to look, and increasingly procurement need to think about how they orchestrate the ecosystem. And the ecosystem is everything from your suppliers, your customers, the tools and systems that you use, and then your stakeholders in the business. And that's really what I think the role of procurement is going forward. And you've absolutely got to own that. And that means that a lot of the heritage that you might have grown up with, you have to let go. So we're going through our selection. I've been very firm with everybody that I want out of the box native. I don't want to be customizing, and I want rapid time to value creation. That's what it's all about. And COVID has provided me with probably a once in a lifetime opportunity where the door is wide open for me to charge in there and really make transformational change. So, the leaders that I work for in the business are saying they're open door, very open. So I think I'm really lucky at a time when, everybody's looking for us as support.
Fabulous. As they say, don't waste a crisis. So that sounds really positive, Stephen. Coretta, what about you? What's been in demand from your stakeholders in the last 3 months?
Yeah, it's interesting. So the first thing our business partners screamed out for was PPE, which was probably a very global cry out. Then they started questioning how our suppliers were in terms of their financial viability and their operational security. And now they're looking at simplification and cost reduction. And I can tell you at no stage in the last 12 months have my stakeholders said we need more advanced sourcing or category management, and yet that is exactly what they wanted and needed, and they just didn't know it. But they've delivered it. 9 months ago, we deployed a new operating model. We completely restructured the team, and we set up a strategic imperative to be category-centric. And this was very different to the activity focus we had previously. So just before COVID, we actually built an entire category management framework from scratch with all of the tools, all of the templates, and all training materials. Over the last 3 months, we've actually delivered all of the training remotely in an application-based training deployment. And what I mean by application-based training is that we trained our team in a module like, say, market intelligence on the Monday afternoon. We provided them all the tools and the templates, helped them work through researching and documenting market intel for their category. And then the next training module on the Wednesday was on business requirements and so on and so on. So it was very, very piecemeal and short training sessions and a lot of support. And what that means is that over 3 months, we now have 70% of our spend with very strong category plans, the quality of which I would say rival a Big Four consultancy agreement and engagement. So today we are really well placed to enable the organisation now that they have a simplification and cost reduction activity, and we're about to feed each one of these into the broader transformation program. The executives that I've already shared some of these with have been exceptionally excited about them. So this has just been an absolutely brilliant platform between the transformation we're about to go in with all of the category management that we've established ourselves in, just to be an absolute showcase.
That sounds like a huge achievement. And I mean, other than the data and actually knowing where you're heading, just building credibility with your stakeholders, it must be a huge asset for that. So, yeah, that sounds very exciting. We'll have a lot of envious CPOs hearing that, Coretta. Now, look, no COVID webinar would be complete without talking about risk. We're certainly in a risk-rich business environment right now, and the respondents to our survey once again was that 93% of procurement leaders say operational risk is the top concern of exec teams, followed by supplier risk at 88% and business environment risk at 87%. So, given we've got the three of you here, which risks are your individual companies most concerned about right now, and what are they doing to mitigate those risks? Stephen, why don't we throw to you?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, we're a services business essentially, and certainly some of the concerns that we have right now is about supply chain viability. And I think, unfortunately, certainly speaking from the markets that I see, I think we're about to see a really uncomfortable period of business distress and, unfortunately, unemployment that will go with that. So we're having to be very, very thoughtful at the moment about who our major suppliers are, how we do business with them, the degree to which we manage the payment terms. I think Michael may have mentioned that a little bit earlier about actually accelerating rather than delaying, just to help them be viable. And as I think we all know, just looking at suppliers through the lens of spend alone often catches you out, because you've got those small critical suppliers that offer those really important technologies that low dollar values but mission critical to your business. So we're doing a very holistic sweep as we speak, trying to understand who those suppliers might be, and how we have to engage with them and kind of really understand where they're at. So I would say, of all of the things that we've got going on right now, that's probably the biggest challenge that we have to manage.
Coretta, what about you?
Yes, everything. Being a bank, it's everything. Every possible risk domain that you can think of, we have on our radar and are concerned about. Financial crime is probably our strongest supply chain risk at the moment, and this has just gotten more and more perilous through COVID-19, where there's been such high levels of opportunism occurring. We really kind of think about it in terms of reputation risk. That really encapsulates every risk that we have as a large, prominent organisation that's in the government sites, the regulated sites, community and customer sites. So there's very little that we would not have a reputational impact on. Our supply chain and our external partners really impact so much how we operate in the financial services industry, and helping so many customers through financial uncertainties of institutions and banks and individuals. And yet our supply chain and our external partners are also such a huge risk in terms of a huge negative impact. A primary focus for me is around modern slavery in Australia. So it is a risk domain that my team are actually driving across the entire organisation, and this is beyond supply chain. This is also our employment relations, our lending and our operations. So we're absolutely in a risk-rich business environment right now.
Well, I mean, I know that banks are tougher than others, but it's crazy thinking, we've had bushfires, we've had, tsunamis, we've had COVID. It's hard to think of any risk that we haven't had in the last 6 months. So, Michael, what about you at Coupa?
Yeah, I'm just going to come from a slightly different angle. I'll definitely answer the question as well. But, I just want to say, like, risk has always been one of those areas that historically, has been very difficult to quantify, right? Like when you look at a CFO and you talked about the ROI of procurement, the return on investment, it's always been about savings versus last year versus a forecast or a budget. And it was never, hey, I have managed to mitigate risk by dual sourcing X amount of spend, or by diverting spend from more risky regions or countries to less risky. I've mitigated political risk or sustainability, reputational risk or improved quality or reduction in lead time. That has never really been a conversation, at least not in my experience. And with everything that I think has transpired over the past couple of months, risk has absolutely taken a completely different perspective at the C-suite, especially the CFO. They're starting to ask business continuity. How confident are you about the continuity of your suppliers, who in turn then come to procurement and say, hey, procurement, what do you know about the suppliers? And, how do we ensure that they don't cut corners? They move spend to more risky areas to reduce costs, or deprioritizing things like sustainability and CSR. So from my perspective, what I would say is from a risk perspective, I would probably say reputational risk today. There's so much disruption that it's very tempting to potentially make some short-term decisions as a supplier that then ultimately has an impact on me. And we've seen a lot of examples. My question here is always to procurement is, when is the last time you had a strategic conversation with your suppliers? And again, we've seen lots of examples from companies that got scrutinized over the past couple of months. Social media is ruthless. There's been some companies that, and again, this has all been in the news, that made some decisions early on, especially when the crisis hit, that really tarnished their reputation. And so there's a real appetite for more enhanced risk management. And being in the company that I am now privileged to work for, we're seeing this across regions and industries, and we're very well positioned to support companies wanting to take their risk management practices to the next level.
Thank you, Mike. Why don't we now just talk about this investment that we're seeing in procurement? So as I said, the top-line findings showed that most organisations, and in fact 93%, are investing big to help them lead. The top areas of investment are data and analytics, existing talent development, and technology. And I guess my personal view now is that if all CPOs aren't pitching for investment in technology for right now, they're really missing a golden opportunity. So would each of you mind sharing your all-time career best effort at securing investment for technology? What was your business case, and how did you get the C-suite on board to support the investment? Coretta, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, so what an interesting question. So I've spearheaded 4 major system deployments or upgrades now across different industries and different cycles. And coming into this role was entirely new, given there'd been multiple attempts to business case procurement technologies for over 6 years, all of which had a financial return, all of which had been rejected. In the last 12 months, we have turned that on its head. I understood as I came in, the C-suite and the business in particular was really focused on risk. So I business cased an entire digital procurement platform based on risk outcomes. We took the opportunity as well of demonstrating the reactive nature we were in with COVID-19, of the amount of spreadsheets we were working in and emails, compared to a state-of-the-art system that could assess risks, have workflows and report in heat maps. And our executives were absolutely sold on risk. Since our business case approval and contracts execution, we've now had 18 high-level design workshops. We've engaged 80 plus stakeholders, and we're rolling out 3 drops between September and November this year. So it's been a fundamental turnaround from the organisation I walked into just on 12 months ago to secure an investment in technology in the so-called back end of procurement. And it was absolutely as a result of understanding the drivers and the priorities of the business.
Stephen, what about you?
Well, I'm going through a very similar journey, it sounds, to that of Coretta. So we are going, as we speak, we're going through the whole design of the solution that we want. And of course, you won't be surprised to hear that Coupa are within our considerations, although I gather that's not the reason I was invited, so I should make that point today, I guess. But
you're not going to negotiate during the webinar, are you, Stephen?
That's right, I'm not. So just as Coretta said, I think that there is an abundance of really clever tools out there that have a level of engineering and a level of pre-packaged capability that means that I think there's a golden age for us to completely revolutionise the way we think of the transactional back end, which simultaneously means that we pivot our real resources to business partnering, category management, value management, rather than kind of the traditional and kind of very tactical approach. So I'm right on that journey as we speak. The one lesson that I've learned through all of the various investment cases I've had through the course of my career is everybody always underestimates the change management investment part. Everybody focuses on the technology investment because you know what you're getting. If you're under budget challenge or you're being nickel and dimed, everybody wants to cut back on change management, in language like, well, they'll just get what they use, through to, well, they're lucky they've got a job. I've seen all of that. My biggest challenge is making sure that we absolutely have the right investment in really changing the organisation, the way people run and operate the tools. That's probably the thing that I've struggled the most to articulate and argue, and it's probably the one that's kept me up the most sleepless nights in my career, where we've implemented big tech and it's not gone very well. Oftentimes the technology is fine, it's just that you didn't really invest in making a change. So I don't think I've given you any success points there, just lots of bruises and cuts, unfortunately.
But I couldn't agree more, Stephen. It's crazy. They cut out the budget line for change management and then complain when the ROI isn't achieved and, the system isn't being adopted. I think it's probably the number one hurdle to really getting the ROI in these systems is ensuring that there is enough investment in the change management. So I'm right with you. What about you, Michael? What's your career best effort for gaining investment in technology?
Yeah, no, just real quick, before I joined Coupa, I did lead that procurement transformation at Lululemon and before that at VF Corp, and they both have digitized their business spend management. But, I think the first thing we have to do is put our money where our mouth is, implementing best practices, save money, improve quality, and do all those basic things that procurement brings to the table. And once we did that, we said, look, the next thing that we now need to do is we need to digitize the procurement process. And, there was a high need at Lulu with, at that point, like 300 plus stores for that single stop shop, as we call it. And, anyone in the company that has the ability to shop for anything they need, whether it's shopping bags in the store, office supplies, or consulting services, or it doesn't really matter, anything you want to really buy, reduce administrative complexity and make it a scalable platform. And, procurement then needs, of course, on the flip side of all of that, we want to increase spend on the management, ensure contract compliance, manage third-party risk. I think Coretta just had a really great and inspiring story around that. And so when you then present that business case and what drives the business and focus on those areas, the funding was actually a walk in the park. It was really easy. I still vividly remember the meeting. I was in and out in like less than 5 minutes. And yeah, we did select Coupa. This is not a sales pitch per se for Coupa. I would ensure the listeners that they focus on end user experience to ensure adoption. That's where your ROI is. The ease and speed of deployment, making sure it's a single platform that takes you from sourcing to contracting and all the way down to downstream procure to pay. But resonating with the business and ensuring that you hammer home the value drivers that are meaningful for your audience are fundamental.
So we're moving toward the end of the conversation today, but I want to ask you one important question before we start to wind up. Were you surprised by the spend visibility finding? And just to remind you all, the findings were that less than 25% of our respondents have full visibility into their addressable spend, which I'm assuming makes it very challenging to manage risk. So kind of two questions here. Does this result surprise you? And have you got any specific advice for our listeners on how they can secure investment, particularly in spend analytics and getting that visibility? Why don't we start with you, Michael?
Yeah, it never ceases to amaze me how procurement is struggling with knowing the checkbook. The saying is, what gets measured gets done. And analytics is the basis for any procurement practitioner at any level, in any company, in any industry. Understanding your spend, your baseline, the ability to run multiple scenarios, explain to your stakeholder why a certain award is better than another. To me, that is it's your basic toolbox. It's like a carpenter showing up at your doorstep without a hammer. I will send that individual away straight away. So, there are plenty of solutions out there, to start analyzing your spend using some kind of taxonomy, whether it's your own custom taxonomy or a UNSPSC. What I will say is this, that at the end of the day, analytics is only meaningful, and it's only meaningful if the source data can be trusted. It's an obvious one, but, having a single source of truth that everybody understands. I have in my career have had so many conversations between finance, the business, and procurement, where, especially between finance and procurement, the question is, how did you calculate the savings? The business doesn't recognize the baseline, and ultimately it makes it extremely challenging and you get into all these conflicting conversations to demonstrate that the value was created, and I think that was mentioned earlier. So digitizing that business spend management process, bringing it into one platform, allowing for accurate reporting is fundamental.
Coretta, what about you? Are you surprised by the spend visibility stats, and what do you think about gaining investment in analytics?
I'm not actually surprised. I mean, firstly, I think it can be exceptionally difficult to have full visibility of your addressable spend depending on your purchasing channels. If you have multiple systems and multiple data profiles, it can be really difficult to cleanse, to categorize, and consolidate. And it's just not easy to have that transparency of classified data and certainly clean data that's easy to absorb. But quite frankly, it might not surprise me, but it makes you as a function and a business advisor exceptionally inefficient and ineffective. I mean, anyone who says I'm accountable for data that I can't access, review, or develop strategies on is not being efficient and effective. And if there's 3 out of 4 procurement professionals out there saying they don't have visibility because of their current systems or internal analytical capabilities, then I think they really need to rethink their priorities. A helpful hint, there are businesses out there that can help you wash your data through their systems and show the analytical insights which you can then use as a business case. And many will do so for no or very little cost. Best case scenario is you gain an executive endorsed spend analytics or digital transformation solution based on the data insights you're providing. And worst case scenario is you have much better cleansed data in a short-term basis to conduct some pretty solid strategic sourcing activities to build some credibility to get there. But seriously, even without having state-of-the-art end-to-end digital platforms, you need to have some data lake or data warehouse you can conduct analytics and insights on. For procurement, this is a ticket to the game, and you cannot play the game if you do not know what the score are or who the players are.
Oh, I love it. Very definitive advice there, as well as a top tip for getting things sorted at a very low price. Stephen, what about you?
Well, again, I'm not surprised, and to some degree, I am surprised because we have been talking about this for many, many years about the importance of data visibility. But I think if I look at my own business at the moment, we are suffering from that very problem. We know what's in the general ledgers, but in terms of actually categories of spend, the real nitty-gritty, we have very little foresight on that. And as Coretta said, it kind of makes you look a little bit impotent in front of the senior leaders that you're talking to about sharing about spend opportunities, when you can't even articulate succinctly what it is you're spending it on. So we're doing some very foundational work at the moment, which is reinventing the whole taxonomy of our spend classification, and then putting it into systems, and then having kind of monthly data feeds, because historically this business has worked on quarterly in arrears. So am I surprised that if Kantar is kind of representative of a lot of people out there? No, I'm not surprised. But it's one of those things that I think CPOs have to own, and they really have to drive, because, as I say, there's nothing more embarrassing than your stakeholders knowing more insight in terms of what they're spending their money on than the procurement function that's meant to have oversight on it.
It absolutely is. Couldn't agree more. So we're coming up on the hour, and I just wanted to give you all 2 quick-fire questions to finish. First of all, what's the biggest concern for your business, and what's the most important focus areas for procurement in the next 6 to 12 months? Coretta.
That would be a digital procurement platform. So that's my wildly important goal. I'm exceptionally proud that we're implementing Coupa end-to-end. So we're going to deploy risk assess, sourcing and contract management in the next 4 months, and I'm expecting purchase to pay by this time next year. After that, we'll do contingent labour and expense management. So Michael, glad that we're on this panel together. I am counting on your support.
You got it.
Wow. That's fantastic, full end-to-end. Stephen, what about you? Biggest concern next 6 to 12 months?
Well, I would say diversity and inclusion, because there's a real danger, I think, that we throw that out the back door whilst we try and manage our businesses through the current 12-month challenge of COVID. But I think that we have a generational opportunity to kind of fundamentally get this right. So in spite of all of the need to take costs out of the business, focus on systems and process and all those kind of things, what I'm trying to do is hold myself to a mirror and say, am I doing everything I can do as a CPO to make sure that I'm bringing diversity and inclusion into my supply chain? And that's the thing that I'm trying to keep myself true to over the course of the next several months.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you, Stephen. What about you, Michael, the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, so I just talked about the foundational work that, some of that foundational work that we definitely have to do internally. I just wanted to echo what Stephen is saying around diversity and inclusion. That's absolutely a topic for us as well in procurement, and ensuring that we focus on that. Sustainability is another one. And for Coupa at large, I mean, we will continue to invest in our platform. We will listen and learn from our customers, such, of course, as Coretta and the team, the prospects. We will continue to support the community, also from a procurement standpoint, right? We are here to help our practitioners around the globe and our customers and prospects be successful in whatever this new economic reality will be.
Wonderful. And the final question, and it's the million-dollar question, the title of today's webinar: do you think now is procurement's time to lead? And if so, what do our listeners need to be doing differently to secure their position at the executive table? Stephen?
Absolutely. I think this is, as you've heard me say through the course of the discussion today, this is our opportunity to really kick open that door and charge through. So absolutely own the opportunity, take it with courage, articulate a narrative that supports the objectives of the business and leads to your opportunity to really build the reputation of the function you represent in your business as one that's driving transformational change.
Michael?
Yeah, obviously nobody wanted this pandemic to happen in the first place, right? I mean, it's an obvious one. And what I'd say is, procurement has been trying, as we've been trying to get a seat at the table for over a decade, at conferences and webinars and get-togethers with my fellow friends in procurement. I've always heard procurement complain that they were not considered strategic and only getting pulled into cost-cutting, departments trying to avoid them, and et cetera, et cetera. So, I have said this before in other settings, but, nobody is going to give you the seat. We need to go grab it by articulating our value proposition and why investing in procurement is not a choice, but it's paramount. We needed something highly disruptive like COVID, right? Apparently, because now we have that attention from the C-suite. We have it. I've spoken to many practitioners out there. We all went from the basement to the boardroom. We have their attention. Grab it. This is our time. Digitize. If you have not started, digitize your business spend management. You got to do it. Do your homework. Turn procurement into a competitive advantage that is not just cutting costs. Our time has come, and I'd say let's not waste it.
Wonderful. And the final word from Coretta.
I think procurement's been a brilliant profession. I've been in for almost 30 years now, and it's exciting, it's intergenerational, and it has become more and more strategic over the years. I really believe that if procurement has not come out of COVID-19 as a more elevated, more strategic, more visible function than going in, then we as CPOs just have not done our jobs right. I do think that there's never been a better time to lead, and my view is we need to take accountability for being the leaders in this time, and the authority and the credibility will just follow. So absolutely, procurement fares well in a crisis. We are in a crisis, and as Tanya mentioned earlier, you should never waste a good crisis.
Well, that's the end of our webinar today. Thank you to our three spectacular CPOs, Coretta Bessie from Westpac Bank, Stephen Day from Kantar, and Michael Van Keulen from Coupa for their amazing insights and contribution today. If you'd like to listen to this webinar again or share it with your peers, we'll be making the on-demand available on Procurious from tomorrow. We're also very excited to be launching the report of the Procurement's Time to Lead survey later this month. If you have registered for this webinar through Procurious, you will be notified when the report is ready to be downloaded. And remember, we're trying to crowdsource confidence during this crisis, so if you need support, please ask a question in our discussion forum to keep the debate going. Thank you for taking the time to listen.